Okay, so we're going to show how to do a black and white um, conversion and a shadow negative for gum over palladium, one color gum over palladium. So I'm going to pull out my image and bring it into Photoshop, and once again we'll get rid of this at the background. We'll bring the image into an area where I can see it and work on it. And I'll discuss the different tools that I use. So we'll bring over our toolbar, which I use all the time. We'll bring over layers. We'll bring over the info palette. In this case, we're not using channels, so I'll get rid of channels. And the history. The history is always important. So in this case, I'm only using four palettes. If I go to the eyedropper tool, I can show you that in the info palette that I use, which is right here, I only use LAB. I've never used RGB. I couldn't tell you RGB numbers. I've always used LAB from the day one of reading film or reading images on a screen. And I took courses with Dan Margulis. I actually took 4 courses. He got frustrated with me that I was so stunned that I kept on coming back. But I learned a lot from him about LAB and basically just the basics. He's a great teacher. He doesn't suffer fools, and I don't know why he suffered me, but he did. So we have LAB, which is the lightness. A, it reads the magenta green, and B reads the yellow blue content of an image. But right now for this, we're only interested in the L numbers. So if I put my cursor on the white area, it's 100% white. So that makes sense. If I put my cursor down into the darkest, deepest holes of this image, it reads 4, L4. And that makes sense. I know that will on a silver gelatin, that will print black. And I know that this will print pure white. Then if I read my highlights, I'm in 90 units in this bright highlight on the column. I know that's going to render as a bright highlight with detail. Down here we're moving down to mid-tone. Right here is a mid-tone region, and you see it's reading 47. So this is how I relay the zone system of the past to current technology by reading all the time the numbers and making sure it works. We use a layer palette all the time. I'm always using layers. I don't keep layers open, much unlike what all Photoshop experts will tell you, but I have my workflows that I'm interested in. I really don't care about keeping a huge history of layers open. I work forward. And the toolbox and history. So first thing we have to do is we have to turn this into the image size. So we're going to go to image size. It's a 12 by 18. It's there. It's at 300, which is the printing resolution for the printer. We say OK. And now we're going to put the canvas on. And I'm going to make it a 16 by 20 canvas. I like black. So I'm making it black, and I'm making a black canvas around. And now I want to drag in the registration bars, and you get the registration bars from the internet. I just Google registration marks, and you should be able to download from some site hundreds of these different types. And I picked this one. You know, I use them when I have complex maths that I can't really see anything else but the registration marks, but generally I register with the image itself, but I like having these marks on as my reference. Okay, so there we have the registrations in. We're going to flatten this. We're going to flatten this and call this positive. So we're going to save this as our working positive. Save as into the folder, And I'm going to call this positive A and save it. Okay, now we need this in case we get dragged away from the computer and we lose our spot. We can always open this back up and start over again and work from here. So step one is to make the palladium negative. So the way I do it is I make a layer, I go into image, adjustments, black and white, and normally this is a fairly neutral image, so it's pretty straightforward. It's either the default, usually it's the default, or the green filter. I usually defer to the green filter, and I like the green filter there. The red filter is going to look pretty good on this one as well. It's a bit lighter, but I think I'm going to stick with the green filter. And for this application, you saw in the past video I was making area for color to come in, but in this case we're just making shadow negatives to hit color to increase contrast. So I'm going to accept this, say it's okay, and I'm going to make a sharpening on this. So I'm going to flatten this, and I'm going to now sharpen this image. And I go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. I have numbers that Dan gave me years ago that I believe in. Also, I bring the opacity down to a certain percent that I know works. This is something that everybody has their own methods of working. You'll end up picking the right one for yourself. So there we have the images sharpened. I'll flatten this. And I like to sharpen the main palladium negative always to give the best detail. So now the next step is to do make the negative. So I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustment, Invert, and then now we have a negative. And I'm going to flip this horizontal. And this is so that when the film comes out of the printer, it's emulsion down, right reading when you're looking down in the light box. And once again, this video is not for beginning level workers, but more advanced people that have worked on film for quite a while, or digital negative, so they may understand the pitfalls of the workflow. So this is how I do it. So we'll go File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Palladium A. Oh, I got my layers open, so I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to flatten my layer. I don't like saving any files with layers open. File, Save As again, and I'm going to call this Palladium A. And I'm going to save that. And now I have those two. I have the positive, which is right reading, and now I have the inverted negative. So what is a negative? Okay, so this is the pure white area, so that's all black. It's not going to let any light through there. And in the shadow areas, it's going to let all the detail coming through, or in this statue. And the columns are more 50% area, and you can read it. And the shadows are very open, so you can see through them, right? And density is going to go through. So another tool palette I keep open is the history. And the reason I do that is I want to be able on the same file go back in time. So I'm going to go back and up before I made the black and white, just after I put the positive together, and I'm going to go up there, and there it is. So now I'm going to use a tool, and the basis of this video is to show you how to use Blend If. It's a function in Photoshop to separate out tonal areas. And for this video, I'm only going to show the shadow area. So I want to make a negative that just shows the shadow areas, so that when I make the palladium, I register the negative to this palladium neg, and register a second negative, that's the shadow area only, and I'm going to print color through there to create Dmax, color balance, whatever I want to do. So we have it set up for the printer, Adobe 1998. We know it's an 8-bit file. What we do is we have a layer made. We take out the bottom layer and we double click here in this blue region right here. This is normally where you name it, but if you double click in here, a window comes up and it's blend if. This is for blending. Once again, I'm not a Photoshop expert, so this is used by different people in various methods, advanced methods all over the world. Everybody uses it differently. I use it strictly for separating out tonal regions. So this is the layer we're working on right now, and you see as I slide it right to the left, it goes away, it opens back up. I can go the opposite direction. Okay, and so by playing with this, I can actually only show the mid-tone areas by bringing both sliders in. So that's only showing the mid-tone areas. So it's a very strong tool to separate densities in an image. So I'm going to bring it back to normal. Now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel here. I'm going to go down to the black and white image because this is actually more where I should be separating out. I'm going to work from here. I could have worked from the color, but I think I'm going to work from the black and white here. I take the background away, I double click, and there's my tool. Okay, so I want to see only this. So that's in this region right in here on the far left. You see how it's black? So I'm going to bring my slider over. All the neutral density is going away. There we go. So that is all the jet black areas of this image. I'm going to go with the Option key on a Mac. I'm working on a Mac. So I'm going to press down the Option key and grab this little slider, and by splitting this you can feather the light a bit. So there's a little split here, and not mandatory, but I like doing it so that transition is a little bit smoother. So right now we have a transition from this point here, and we're getting all this area right now. So we say, okay, we like that. Now we're going to go up here and we're going to flatten this image. It's going to say discard hidden layers. Say yes, okay. And you now have an image that has the positive image. This is a positive image of the very shadow area only of this image. And then the next step is to make a layer, go up into image, adjustments, invert. Now it's a negative, and it's going to let light through only in these areas, in these regions of shadow. We're going to flip it horizontal, and we're going to save this as the shadow negative. File, save as shadow A. Oh, there's a layer there again. Cancel it, sorry. Flatten that layer. I don't want to save layers. File, save as shadow A. And we're going to save that. So if we go back to the original folder now, so it's saving, so we'll get out of Photoshop here for a second. We'll go into Monica Glitz's folder, and this is images by Monica Glitz, by the way, a woman that I work with quite a bit. And we're going to open up the 4 items that are in this folder now, or subfolder. There's the original, and takes a little bit of time here, folks. There's the Palladium neg. There's the positive. And coming up is the shadow. Okay, so if I bring this out here. So I look at the original. There's the original. I can get rid of that. If I look at the positive, you understand that this is what we worked from. If we had to go back and redo the whole thing, we'd go back to this. Or if we had to go back and resize the whole thing, we would go to this. So we'll get rid of this. And by just clicking between the two, you can see there's the negative with all the detail, and this is the negative with just the area here. And this is what we want. So now they're 8-bit files. We'll remember that. So the next tool that's really important is the quad tone rip, which is installed here to work with my Epson printer, and it has a print tool attachment. So this is a system designed by Roy Harrington and Ron Reeder, and I actually had the great pleasure of having Ron come to my place twice, and he set this up for me. I'm eternally grateful to Ron Reeder for that. I got a beautiful program by the guy that wrote the book on it. So here we go. We open up the print tool, and because the images are 16 inches by 20, we're going to make one negative at a time. So the film, Pictorico film, or I don't use Pictorico, I use a different brand. But whatever film you use, it doesn't matter. I'm using a quad 7800, quad tone rip on a 7800. I'm going to use 17-inch by 20-inch film. So I set that up. I've got selection of 8-bit or 16-bit. I go to 8-bit because that's what the image is. And basically all I have to do now is go to the Palladium neg and drag the Palladium A into the tool. Now you'll notice, and this is what you have to be careful, its scale factor is 98.75, which is because I'm clipping slightly. So I'm just going to go to 100%, and it's going to say image clipped. It's okay because it's only clipping on the border area, which will not be of any problem down the road. If you didn't want this to clip, then you could take it to a different size, but I like going to 100% because I want my image to be 12 by 18. So I'm open to clip, or I could have set up a page setup and set this up to 17 by 22, and I would have had more height and it wouldn't clip. But there's no drama here. It's just the way it works. So I'm going to hit print. Another thing comes up, and once again, folks, your systems may be different. Don't write this down. This doesn't make any sense. This is how I do it. Only it may work differently on your computer. I go down into the quad tone rip, and the quad tone rip program. Now I stay 8-bit. Yes, sir. What curve am I using? I can use none, or I can go in there. I can use Blah curve, COT 320 curve. I've got this PT-PD curve. This is the other one, and there's a Revere curve. I'm using the PT-PD curve. I'm using sheet film. I'm using 2800 bidirectional advance, and I'm using adaptive hybrid, and then I print. And that's it. So I hope that's helpful, and the next stage will be stripping the film.